So today, I've been thinking that we will have a special uh, um, discussion today as a prelude to our Gita study. And I will give you some context as to why this seems like a good idea. So, essentially, a thought that has been coming to my mind is that the idea of Advaita Vedānta and the Guru and Hinduism, this threefold connection, I feel, is worth discussing for all aspirants. And so we will start here, and then we will see how it will be all put together in the end. So why this need? The first point is that, from the highest perspective, there is no need. The wisest will know that, in fact, the greatest instructor, greatest guru, Sri Dakshinamurti, instructed the rishis in silence. But of course, that instruction is available only to a very, very rare few in that direct manner. So therefore, instruction is then given through other means, through study of the Shruti, Smriti, Puranas, etc. And that instruction has a lot of value too. But as time has gone on, the ability of the general populace to access the Shruti, Smriti, and Purana, and even the Prakarana Granthas after that, has unfortunately fallen off to an extent where the recognition of the true teaching itself has become difficult for the general populace. And one of the observations is that the teachers that a society puts up will be only as good as the students' demand of it. Therefore, for the greater good of all students of Advaita Vedānta, it's important that some of these points be clarified and a socio-cultural context be given as to how things came to where they are right now, so that overall all aspirants and students of Advaita Vedānta can increase their level to the point where they demand the best of the teachers. And so there will be overall benefit to all practicing. It will clear many misconceptions, misinformation. It will be generally accessible to all aspirants, but it will be of special importance to that aspirant who is wanting to cultivate viveka, discrimination. And by this, I mean discrimination in a more general sense, because the word viveka has a very specific meaning in Advaita Vedanta. But that specific form of discrimination cannot be achieved unless there is discrimination in the empirical phenomenal world. So the goal of, you may say, these discourses is to enable the sincere aspirant to cultivate that high level of discrimination so that they can seek out the source in the multitude of teachings and teachers and so-called teachers and various ways in which this information is being propagated and distorted. So, with that in mind, with that good intention, we will start a brief discussion. So, what is Advaita Vedanta really? And of course, we can translate the words, and a very large number of people can translate. So, just in case somebody does not know the direct meaning of it, Advaita, non-dual, not two. Dva, two. Dvaita, the state of duality. Advaita, negation of that, not the state of duality. That is fairly straightforward and is not required, from an intellectual perspective, a great leap of understanding. Although, simple as it is, its experience is a vastly different matter. Vedanta. Veda is, of course, we know, the very source of all our Hinduism, and derived from the root vid, to know. So it is knowledge itself. But Vedanta means the end of that knowledge, the culmination, the ultimate end. So now normally, the general feeling I get when people think of Advaita Vedanta is that you betake yourself to study it. Ideally, you go to some talks. There are so many things available nowadays on YouTube, and also in the days when we could meet in person, there were meetings in person, right? And we would find discourses of various kinds, and people would, some teacher of wherever in various institutions will start giving some discourse. And this discourse may be either informal, as in informed by the teacher's knowledge and experience, and it may be on a wide range of topics. I mean, we have seen a discourse on consciousness and Advaita Vedanta, if you remember, that Swami Sarvapriyanandaji gave when he came here to Iowa State once. But they can also involve discussion of the Prakarana Granthas, or they can involve the discussion of the Prasthana Trayi themselves, which are the 3 points of departure for Advaita Vedanta, which involves the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutra. Now, one thing that is often lost in these discourses, one of the many things, is that rarely is it articulated, what will I benefit by studying Advaita Vedanta? The purpose should be clear, right? One does not study something just because everybody thinks it's very good, or it's it's a great philosophy, right? Yeah, surely those are also reasons to start, but it is important to articulate why. And of course, the articulation of that is principally what we have always discussed in this satsang as the very purpose of Hinduism, or what is Hinduism itself, right? It is to learn how to live that way of life, right? Which is in accord with the Sanatana Dharma. That is all there is to it. So Hinduism and Advaita Vedanta at one level are not different, right? This is very important to recognize. It's not something separate. This is often lost. And part of the discourse will explain why that is the case. So, what is the advantage of living in accord with the Sanatana Dharma? Is, first of all, the absence of sorrow and the experience of bliss. Quite simply that. So many times we have discussions with people, particularly now in this time of COVID pandemic. A very common point of grief is when people confront death, especially of people they know and people they are attached to, either friends, relatives, within the family, yes or no. This is the principal greatest suffering, we may say, right? And of course, as you well know, the Beautiful Bhagavad Gita deals with this directly in the chapter 2, straight up, first head on. Right? And so naturally, it is not a surprise that the study of Advaita Vedanta in the proper way and its complete experience should lead to that absence of sorrow. And a slight distinction has to be made here. By this absence of sorrow is not meant a kind of tight-lipped, white-knuckled equanimity, even though the tears are welling up inside, the heart is quaking with emotion, and then you stand stiff upper lip and say, no, I am equanimous. This is not what is meant. Not at all. Not at all. That is suppression and repression of emotion that is not recommended. The attitude comes about because of an undeniable knowledge of the truth that what has happened is not a cause for sorrow. There is a big difference. Do you understand? Sorrow itself does not arise in the mind. I gave an example to somebody from our satsang, which might be appropriate here again. Let us say a family is traveling in a train in India. Father, mother, child. Okay, child is very young, few years. Okay, but old enough to recognize father, say 4 or 5 years. Train comes to stop at a station, father gets out. So many times our parents have done this, right? Father gets out, gets some chai, maybe some snacks for the family, maybe smoking a cigarette or bidi. Train starts moving. Okay, the child does not see the father get into the compartment. The child is stricken with sorrow. It is very real. The child will cry. Yes or no? Will the child cry or not? Heartbroken. Father is gone. I cannot see father. I have no clue how we are going to see father again. It is a very real emotion, right? However, father has hopped down to the next compartment and there is a vestibule. So a mother, on the other hand, sitting in the compartment, is she crying? No. She has seen father do this many, many times. Okay. She is well experienced. She has knowledge that this is not a cause for sorrow. She has knowledge that he's not getting back in the compartment is not a cause for sorrow. The child does not have that knowledge and weeps. Is it wrong for the child to weep? No. The child is being authentic to its emotion and to its level of knowledge. Right? Is the mother suppressing her emotion and not crying because she is feeling sad? No. She is comforting the child and saying, no, child, it's okay. Father will come. And sure enough, in a few moments, father appears with snacks and tea for the family through the vestibule, and the child is brought back to a calm state. This is, in one way, an essence of how we say sorrow is transcended. So this is an example. But of course, like all analogies, it has some limitations. All analogies have limitations. Otherwise, if all of Advaita Vedanta and Bhagavad Gita could be explained in one analogy, there would be no reason for it. But it's still, analogies serve a purpose. They serve to open our minds to a different way of thinking. So now this is obviously important to identify what is the purpose, what is the benefit. And like I said, because it is this way of living in accord with the Sanatana Dharma, it is in fact no different from Hinduism. But now, Advaita Vedanta is not the only way. In our Hindu philosophy, we speak of Shad Darshana, 6 darshanas. And first of all, what does the word darshana mean? Drish pashyati, from the Sanskrit word drish, to see. Darshana means a vision, a revelation, in fact, through the inner eye. So a revelation of what, you must ask? What is the darshana of? It's the darshana of the Veda itself, of the truth seen in the Vedas. Correct? Okay. So now, normally when people go to Advaita Vedanta discourses, the teachers talk about Brahman, Maya, etc. Correct? And most people come away thinking that Advaita Vedanta is the experience of Brahman in this state, which is samadhi, non-dual, etc., etc. Yes or no? But that is only half the story. When the rishis experienced Brahman, did they all stay silent? No. There is a distinction in our culture also, which again, unless you have grown up in that culture, you will not know. There are munis and there are rishis. Munis are maun. They are so engrossed in the bliss of Brahman that they did not say anything beyond that. And we have among our great gurus a modern muni also. But the rishis broke out in song. Okay. So therefore, if the full experience of Advaita Vedanta has to be accomplished, it must involve a complete understanding of the Veda in the very form that the rishis sang it. The ultimate Mahavakya says, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. Indeed, all this is Brahman. So the rishis had that knowledge by which they could explain everything. Okay, and that we see as Hinduism. So in its ultimate thing, Advaita Vedanta should lead you to an understanding of the Shruti, the Smriti, the Puranam, the Vedam and the Upavedam. It is not a blank. This is very important to recognize. So therefore, let's go a little further. This is important because vision of the truth of the Vedas. So now let me give you another analogy. You all like some type of cuisine. Let's say Indian cuisine is very famous, right? Anywhere you go in India, the food is great. This is something nobody will disagree with. Agree with me? And I'm not speaking just because I'm from India. All over the world you go, Indian cuisine is famous. So let us suppose I invite you to a meal, okay? I will invite you to an Indian meal. Now, at the end of Indian meal, we give something called mukhwas. Would you say in the north? In the south, we give what's called vettala pak. Vettala is beetle and pak is beetle nut. Okay. In other places, they give pan. Properly, we may call this bhojanantam. If I invite you to my house and I give you mukhwas and say, this is your meal, go home, what will you feel like? What will you feel like?
Disappointed.
Disappointed and ridiculous. Yet, if you go to Advaita Vedanta lecture, you will happily come back without learning anything about the Vedas. How is that? Why is that? Discrimination. Discrimination. Right? Don't come back with an empty belly from a meal. It is meant to be a banquet. Right? So, don't come back with pan or just vetlapaka. You must enjoy the full meal. Shruti, Smriti, Puranam, Vedam, Upavedam, Bhakti, Puja, everything. Everything should be understood when you accomplish the highest knowledge in Advaita Vedanta. This is very important. Now, similarly, you take high school studies of mathematics, right? In mathematics, in high school, or all through 12 years, right? Generally, students study 12 years mathematics. So, final culmination is what? Calculus. Would you agree? Calculus is grades 11 and 12. Right? Now, we may say that calculus is the maths antam, end of maths. Can you go and study calculus directly without arithmetic? You cannot. You cannot. So this is another perversion that we are seeing nowadays. How can you study Vedantam without knowing anything about the Vedam? You cannot. Actually, you cannot. In truth, you cannot. You must know something about the Vedam before you can study the Vedantam. Correct or no? I gave you two nice examples. So therefore, we must be aware of this. Discriminating student, discriminating aspirant must be aware of these differences. So then must come the question, so then who is qualified to teach Advaita Vedanta? This is an important question too, right? Just as the level of understanding you get if you go and study quantum mechanics from, say, Richard Feynman, or relativity from Einstein, imagine what is the level of understanding you will get there versus, you take a course online, maybe, right? Think of the difference, right? This is something to keep in mind. Who is an expert? Now, anybody who puts a YouTube video is an expert these days. Yes or no? We don't check much of the antecedents unless we cultivate discrimination, right? Sharp discrimination, razor sharp discrimination. Another interesting thing is, because I'm involved in the teaching profession, I will share with you a very practical example from teaching. So when we first come in to teach, I was given a book, and in that book it said that they ran an experiment. They took a teacher of the subject and they took a very good actor, okay, and they had two sections of the same class. Teacher went and taught the lecture, actor went and taught the lecture. At the end of the thing, they asked the students, which one was more convincing to you? Guess which one they said? The actor. Can you believe it? Projecting confidence can dupe 99% of the people, even without knowing the subject matter. If that is the case in mundane studies, imagine how much more difficult in the more abstract business of philosophy and spiritual growth, etc. So this is something to keep in mind. Appearance and reality. We talk about this in Advaita Vedānta also. Appearance and reality. On a deep sense, appearance and reality. On a superficial sense, appearance and reality. Right? What is appearing in front of you? What is the reality behind it? So these things we should keep in mind. Okay. Now, we can give also a discussion, a precise definition of who is a guru. So in the Mundaka Upanishad, there is a very beautiful verse which goes, Lokan karmachitan brahmano nirvedamayat nasti akritam kritena tad vijnanartham gurumeva abhigachet samitpanihi shrotriyam brahmanishtham. I'll translate the whole verse for you, but this verse contains in it the definition of a guru. Who is a guru? It answers that question. So the verse goes like this: Pariksha Lokan, having examined all the worlds, and the worlds is in plural. We know only one world. We know the physical world. So we know the world of automobiles and planes and family and work and play and children, etc. This is one world. Okay. There are 7 such worlds actually. So having examined this world and all the worlds above it, Bhor Bhuva Subha Mahajana Tapasati, Dharma Chitan, and noting that these are all creations of thought, mental thought, which is actually the root of karma. Dharma Chitan. Brahmano, a Brahmin. And we can also come back to who is a Brahmin. In this context, a Brahmin is one who knows that all creation has come from Brahma and he is also from Brahma. Or she has also come from Brahma. There is no gender specificity necessarily here. Brahmano. Nirvedamayat. Nasti, he comes to the realization, or she comes to the realization, that all these things that are seen in the 7 worlds are purely constructs of thought. So, tad vijnanartham. So, in order to understand the truth, guru meva abhigachet. Let this person go to a guru. Samit Panhi, in the hands holding the samit sticks, which are used in the yajna, which has a deep symbolism of being the samskaras of that person. Ani Shrotriyam Brahman. This is the definition. A guru is a Shrotriya and a Brahmanishta. So, quickly, like in a simple way, I'll try to explain who is a Shrotriya. Shrotriya is a very high order of Vedic knowledge. The person who is a Shrotriya, very literally, it means he who is worth being listened to. Worth listening to. But in those days, they had a very high standard of what was worth listening to, right? Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. Second aspect is eternally established in Brahman. That is, that guru's mind never deviates from the state of Brahman. All embracing, all encompassing state of vision, right? So, Shrotriyam itself has a more precise definition. There is a verse that goes, Janmana Brahmano Vidyat Samskarehi Dvijamuchyate Vidvatvatu Vipratvam Tribhi Shrotriyam Uchyate. So, this verse has 4 feet. First one is, by birth in a family, one attains state of Brahmana. Then, samskarahi, by the samskaras, one becomes a Dvija. So, what are these samskaras? The one being referred to specifically here is Upanayana samskara, the one samskar by which the person, spiritual aspirant, is brought close to the guru. Now, Dvija, twice born. There are many people who have the Upanayana samskar but are not twice born at all, actually. Twice born is a very specific meaning here. It is only when Kundalini Shakti is awakened, the person is born again. That is the second birth. So it could happen to someone who is not so traditionally brought up also. We must not discount that fact, right? Undoubtedly, the traditional practices in the ancient times did have that. A child who was brought in through Upanayam would instantly have had the awakening and would be called a Dvija properly, right? But to be fair, nowadays there are many people who may have the samskara who are not Dvijas. There are many who don't have the samskara at all. Right? And it's also possible that some people who neither born in a Brahmin family nor had the samskara might have a spiritual experience that corresponds to awakening of the Kundalini Shakti. We must acknowledge this. This is important, right? So, once that awakening has happened, is that enough? Very important. No, that is not enough to be qualified to be a guru. Vidvatvatu vipratvam. Vidvat. The Vedam must be known. Vidvat must be there in the Vedam. Then one attains the quality of Vipra. Next level. So, Anubhava and knowledge of the Vedam. Tribihi. When all three are there, that person is called a Shrotriya. That means they knew that you can have one or the other. Today, if you go around the world, there are people who have the second qualification. We have talked about this previously in Satsang also. They have had some form of spiritual experience, but it is not combined with the other two. When all three are present, that person is called Shrotriya. And from that Shrotriya is where the Guru Vachanam can come. Right? This is what the Mundaka Upanishad tells us. So therefore, this is also the reason why when we do the Sandhya Vandanam, we say the Pravaram. Because we trace the lineage directly from the Rishis. The Rishis are not some abstract other people. They are the ancestors of humanity. The only difference is some people know their ancestors and some people don't. Those who don't know their Pravara are not damned or condemned. It is just that they forgot. So the person who has forgot should learn from somebody who has remembered or not. Yes or no? Doesn't it make sense? That's all. Right? This is the whole system. Right? So, with that introduction, next time we will take up the question of what use is Advaita Vedanta to the ordinary Hindu.